Hey everyone, this is Dean. Welcome back to another Photoshop Friday. Hope you guys are having a fabulous day. I certainly am here. And today on this episode, I want to show you how to make selections in Photoshop. Now, nothing hard, nothing complicated, nothing fancy pantsy. I'm just going to show you the tools and how to use them to make quick, easy selections in Photoshop. So if you're fairly new to Photoshop and you haven't gone down that path yet of making selections, this is going to be absolutely perfect for you. Even if you're an intermediate user and you are already making selections, I'm sure there'll be some stuff in here that you weren't sure of, and that'll help you out as well. So let's jump into Photoshop and I'll show you how. For this tutorial, I'm using Photoshop CC 2019, so look, hopefully everything looks the same for you. Some things may be a little bit different if you are using an older version. Now, first up, you'll need your toolbar or tool palette open, this one here. If it's not open, just go to Window, come down to Tools and just select that, and that'll bring that up. Now, our three tools that I'm going to show you are just situated underneath the Move tool. So the first one is the Move tool, and then we've got the next three underneath that. So this one here, the elliptical or rectangular Marquee tool. There's a Lasso tool and a Quick Selection tool. Now, when a tool has this little triangle here in the corner, that means that there's a couple of different tools inside there. So just click and drag out and it'll open up your two options for selecting those. So this particular one has a rectangular tool or a round elliptical tool. So let's start off first with this one, the Marquee tool. So the shortcut on your keyboard for that is M, and as I said, we've got the round or the rectangular. So let's just click and drag, and now this is in freehand mode, so I can make any sort of oval shape that I like. Now just a tip here, if you hold the space bar down, you can actually move that into position. So if we got it roughly to the right size we wanted, we can then hold the space bar down and then move that to where we want. Once we let go of the mouse, we then have our selection made. Now, with a selection, what is actually selected is inside the marching ants. So we've made a selection here, and so what we're actually selecting is the inside of this circle, not the outside of it. Now, to get rid of a selection, it's Command or Apple D. Okay, so that gets rid of it. You can get a selection back by just going reselect up here, and that'll bring your last selection back up for you. And if you want to select the whole entire image, or just get rid of that selection, it's Command A. So that selects everything, and you can see here the whole image is selected. Okay, let's just go to the rectangular one and I'll show you that. Now all of these tools up the top here, the layout will be fairly similar. We have some other options up the top, so I'll just run through those with you. So the first one is to make a new selection, that is highlighted, and if we click on the next one, that is now highlighted, that is add to a selection. The third one is subtract from a selection, and then the fourth one is intersect with a selection. We have an option here of being able to apply feathering. Okay, now if you want to apply feathering, you have to dial it in before you make the selection. So you can't make a selection and then tell it that you want to feather it 50 pixels, because it won't feather it. Okay, you need to make that first. So you would select the amount of feathering you want and then make your selection. Up here for style, for this particular tool, we have three options. Normal, which basically means you can draw freehand. I'll just get rid of that one and I'll show you. So when it's a normal, you're not restricted by any shape or size. Okay. And when you are in a fixed ratio, this is a good one if you wanted to make a selection that was a perfect square, then you would select your ratio to 1:1, and then however you drag, that will be a perfect square. Now these edges are coming up rounded on here because I've got 50 pixels feathering set to that. I'll just turn that feathering off. And then the last one is a fixed size, so you could actually make it an exact size if you wanted to. Now just a quick example of how I use this tool, or how you could use it, one particular example. So I'm going to select the elliptical round tool, and I'm going to set the feathering to 350 pixels. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a vignette. So I'll just make a selection here. It's going to be pretty quick and rough. Now if you want to know how to do this, just go to my video on it, how to make a vignette, and all will be revealed there. So I've made a selection. I'm going to inverse that selection, which means it selects the opposite. And then if I cut that out, I'll just turn that layer off. Okay, so we've made a selection, we've feathered the middle of it, and it's sitting on the outside. We've selected all of the outside of the image, and that layer I can then change to multiply, and that darkens the outside of it. So there is a very quick, easy way of making a vignette via a selection. As I said, I do have a full video on that if you want to learn how to do that. Okay, so that is the Marquee tool. The other way this is used a lot is for graphics. So the thing you have to remember, and this is the big difference between Lightroom and Photoshop. Photoshop is really, it's not primarily based, but it has a lot more stuff in there to do with graphic design. So a lot of these tools are used by graphic designers. You know, you can make a circle and you can fill that with a color. So if we filled that with white, and again that had a feathering on it, so I just go out of that. So sometimes you might want to put text in, and you want the text behind a big black square box. We'll just turn that feathering off, and the rectangular one. Oh, now it's on square, fixed size. I don't want that. Let's go back to normal. So if we wanted to put some text up the top, we could make a box. Now to show you how to move that box. So once you've made a selection, you can move it afterwards, but you need to be in the new selection box up here. That needs to be activated. See how this one here was add to a selection? So that allows us to add to a selection, but we can't move that selection. So when we're in this one, now when I'm inside that selection, see how the cursor changes, and I can actually move that. So I can get that to wherever I want, and then I could fill that with a black or a white. I said black, so let's do black. Okay, so that could be a black box with some text in it or something else. Now, before I move on to the next tool, I just want to show you the add to and the subtract feature here, and this works for all of the tools, so it doesn't matter which one you have selected. So let's just make a selection. Now, when you're on new selection, you can only make one selection. So if I click over here, see how the other one's disappeared, because we're only in new selection mode. So if you want to add to a selection, you need to click this little box here. And now I can either add a new selection over here, or I can add to a selection. Okay, so wherever we click, we're not losing the other selections, and we can add to it. Now the third one along is minus, so this will subtract. So you will see now on the cursor we've got a minus key come up. So now wherever I click, that will subtract that selection. So if you want to get rid of a whole selection but leave the other one there, you just go right over it. Okay, and I said that'll work with any of the selection tools. The other quick way of changing is between plus and minus is just holding down the Alt or the Option key. So when we're in Add to selection, you'll see a plus. Now this only works in the Add to, it doesn't work from the minus, but when you're in Add to, if you add to a selection and then you realize you've added a bit too much and you want to subtract some quickly, instead of having to come up here to change the tool, you can do it on the fly by holding down the Alt key on a PC, Option key on a Mac, and then just click and drag, and that will deselect it from the selection or subtract it from the selection. Okay, so that's the Marquee tool. The next one is a Lasso tool. So think of the Lasso tool as just a freehand tool. So we just click, it's just like writing with a pencil. Okay, and we can make freehand selections. And again, we can add to a selection and we can subtract from that selection using this tool. This is one I use quite a bit. If you just want to make a quick rough selection to cut something out and move it and then feather it off or whatever, it's one that just allows you to very quickly make a rough selection by hand. Now I'll quickly show you these other two. I'm not a big fan of them, although this one, the poly one, it can be handy, but again I think it'll be used more in graphics rather than photography the way we do it, or landscapes or portraits or whatever. So with the poly lasso tool, what it does is you click, and then as you drag it, everything's a straight line. You can't bend or go around anything, so you click and drag, it creates another point, and you just keep going until you come back to your start point, and there you have your selection. So it's good if you wanted to make a selection on something that was perfectly square or had very straight lines, but you can't use it to go around this cloud, it just wouldn't work. Now the magnetic lasso tool, this one I used to use a fair bit before before the quick selection tool or the magic wand became available and became so good. So I find it's a little bit harder to use on a bigger area, but selecting something small, let's just say this little rock here, let's zoom in on it and let's select it. So what it does is you just click once, so you find your edge, you click, and then you just let it run around, and it's like a magnet, it just finds the edge. So again, if you've got something that's got a nice defined edge, then it works quite well. Okay, there you go, so that's sort of selected that quite nicely. Now the one that you will use the most, is the quick selection tool, or the wand. So W on your keyboard, and there's a quick selection tool and a magic wand. So I'll just quickly show you the magic wand and then I'll go into more detail on the quick selection tool, because that's the one that does a really amazing job. So what this one does is it picks up colors, and you click on a color and it basically looks around and selects other colors that are similar to it. So it has a tolerance here. It normally defaults to 32, and the higher the number, then the more that it looks outside of those colors. So we'll just leave it at the default 32, and then if we just click, and again I'm on add to, so it'll as I click it'll add these colors to the selection. But as you can see, it's leaving these little bits around here. So it does quite a good job, but it's not brilliant, and it's a little bit tedious, and it doesn't get everything. I'll just see we've got some stuff in here that's not selected. I'll show you how the lasso tool is good. You can leave that selection there. You can come back to the normal lasso tool and make sure we're on plus, and then you can just click around those, and then that will select them. And you could actually tidy this up now with the Lasso tool by going minus. If we want to get rid of that bit under there. And even if we wanted to draw the last little bit freehand, we could do it that way. Now that's set to feathering of 15, which I don't want. So let's just do that again. So I'm minus getting rid of that selection. Now if I wanted to add this bit under here, with the Lasso tool I can come in and just add it freehand. Yeah. And these ones here, so these are deselected at the moment, so to include those I would just lasso around them and they are now selected. So you can use two different tools to make your selection. You can see that's done a pretty good job now on that little rock. Okay, let's get rid of that and let's move on to the quick selection tool. So this one, we need to just change our cursor size, so I'll just bring it down a bit smaller. Let's just do that same rock. And we're on plus, so that's all fine. So I just click and drag over it. Okay, there you go. And just try and pick up a little bit more underneath here. So again, with a minus tool, now this is pretty hard selecting in here because it's feathering off so much that it does an incredible job being able to do anything, I reckon, to get it anywhere near. Let me just go plus on that. So that's done a pretty good job to quickly select that. So that's the wand tool. Now just deselect that and I'll just show you a bit more how you can use this tool, because this is the one that you're going to use most of the time. Make your life nice and easy. So let's say I want to select all of this sky because I want to darken it down. So I've got the quick selection tool and I've just changed that cursor size. Now you can come up here to your cursor size and select it here, or I do it on the fly, so just hold down Control and then Alt or Option on a Mac, so both of those keys, and then just click and drag left and right. Okay, so left makes it smaller, right makes it bigger. It's just a nice quick easy way of changing the size of your brush instead of having to come up onto a slider. You can also use the brackets on your keyboard, so your left and right bracket also do the same thing. So with a brush, you don't want it too big and you don't want it too small. Again, that'll just be practice. And then there you go. And I only clicked from here through to here and it picked up that whole sky, and it's done a perfect job just picking that up there. And I'm just going to cut that out and just show you that on a separate layer so you can see what it's actually done. So that has done a wonderful job, and it was just a 1 second click. Now I'll just come back here. So I'll just select that again and just show you another way of refining this. So there's a thing here called select and mask. Now if you're in an older version of Photoshop, this won't be here, and it used to be called refine edge. So they changed it from refine edge to select and mask. It's basically the same thing. I think it might have changed when we went to the cloud version of Photoshop. I'm not quite sure. Now I'll just get this up and I'll show you. So it brings up this palette here. So we're now in another window and we can now fine tune this selection. Now if you're in an older version, yours is going to look a little bit different, but it's really just a couple of controls here that we use, and some up here that should be the same that I'll show you. If you are in a new version, just let me close this. If you're in a new version and you really like the old refine edge, you can actually get it back. It's hidden. You come up to select and you come down to select and mask, and you hold down the shift key and click on that, and yeah, this is the old version here. So I think the difference is, I think the old one didn't have a refine edge brush. That might be the difference. Anyway, let's go to select and mask. Now I want to darken this sky down, so I don't want a hard edge along here. I want it to feather it out. I want it to look like it's going from dark at the top coming down to lighter. So I want to add a gradient into this. So we just want to add some feathering. So we just come down here to feather, and I just know from experience that 350 is a good number for feathering my size files. So now you can see that that is feathering out through from that selection, and it's going to be lighter down the bottom, and it'll gradient into that sky. Now if your picture doesn't look like this on this transparent layer, it'll be because of this view. And there's different ways you can look at it. You can look at it as a mask, you can look at it as on white, on black, a red overlay, just marching ants. But I like to go this one on layers. It sort of knocks out the background layers so I can actually see what's happening with my selection. So we just go, I was going to give that 350. So 350, and we go OK. And now we'll knock that out as a layer. And I'll turn the base layer off just to show you that that is now feathered in. Turn that base layer back on. And to darken the sky down, you could use levels or whatever. I normally just use multiply, change the blending mode to multiply. That'll darken it, and then I just back the opacity back a little bit on the layer, and there I've just darkened the sky down. It's just darkening from the top coming down. It's not getting darker down here, which just feathers it in and makes it look a little bit more natural. So that's one way of just very quickly and very easily selecting a sky. So I'll just show you some more selections on this image. So again, we're just using that quick selection tool. And again, if we want to select this rock, I just click and drag over it. And as you can see, I don't want to select the dark area, just the lighter bit of the rock. Let's just say I wanted to darken this rock down a little bit. Actually, let's do that, and I'll just show you again. We're going to go to select and mask, and I'm going to feather this because I don't want it to be really hard edged along here, or if I'm going to darken that, it's going to look really odd. I just want to feather it in a little bit. So select and mask. Now for this type of work, I normally feather in about sort of 30 to 40 pixels. Let's actually go a little bit more. But what happens when you feather is it feathers from the edge, but now don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure what it does is if you're feathering 70 pixels, then it'll feather 35 in and then 35 out. So you end up with a little bit of sort of bleeding on the edge, which can cause halos and sort of unattractive stuff when you start to darken and lighten things. So if I'm using this technique, what I then do is I've added feathering to here. So what I want to then do is shrink that original selection to bring it in away from that edge. So I come down here to shift edge, and if I want to make it smaller, I just come to the left. Okay, and as you can see, if I go way down, you can see that that's making it smaller. So I come down to about sort of 30–40%. Let's try that. This can be a little bit hit and miss. Yeah, so you can see now that selection is sitting inside that edge. And if I Command J that, okay, and then if I just did a levels control on that to darken this down, I just take those midtones and I can just darken that slightly, and you can't see any nasty stuff happening on the edges. Just turn that on and off. Okay, if I hadn't shifted the edge on that, then the darkness would be coming outside of here, and it's even worse when you lighten. When you lighten something, it leaves a halo sitting past that edge, which is not very nice. So that's a little trick when you feather an object like that, just shift the edge to make it a little bit smaller to counteract your feathering. Right, let's dump that one. I'm going to go to another image now, and I'm going to show you a couple of other features. So again, I'm still in that quick selection tool mode. Now up here you may have seen select subject, and this is a new one too for, I'm pretty sure it's just Photoshop CC. I can't remember it being in earlier versions. So what it does is it tries to just select the subject. So you do need an image that has an obvious subject. So let's just select it and see what happens. So what I want to do is I want to make a selection of this rock. So instead of doing it by hand, let's just click this button here and see how smart Photoshop is. Ah, look at that. It's pretty damn clever, isn't it? It's done pretty much a perfect job. It's just down that end there. It hasn't quite picked up that edge. So let's just zoom in and have a look around those edges. That's pretty damn good. It's just got one little bit there it hasn't quite got right, and it hasn't quite picked up that bit on the end. So again, I'll just make this smaller, and I'm in the plus zone here so I can add to this selection. There we go. Now what I want to show you is this refine edge. So let's just see if it'll tidy this bit up here. So it didn't quite get this edge here right. So we go to select and mask. So we come in here and select that. And you can see down here it's not quite right either. Oh yeah, here it is up here. I lost it. Okay, so we come over to the left here and we select the second one down, so refine edge brush tool. So we have that selected, and then we just click over that, and there you go, that's tidied that up. So we've got another little bit down here, and I'd suggest don't go over every edge, just pick your bits that look pretty cruddy. Yeah, so that is perfect. So if you want a perfect selection and you want all nice, crisp edges, then bring it into select and mask and just use that refine edge brush. So we would then go, okay, I'm not going to add any feathering to this. I'm going to just cut that out to show you guys. So what's happening now is we've come out of that select and mask mode, but we've still got our selection here. Okay, so if we want to cut that out as a new layer, Command J, and you can see up here, it has made that as a new layer. So let me just go through, just for an example, let me lighten this and we'll just see how good those edges are. Because normally if the edges aren't good, it'll throw up a really bad halo behind the rock. And it's actually not too bad, that's amazing. So you could actually just make a quick selection like that without really getting too fussy, and you could lighten it up a little bit. Put the preview on might help. Start again. Let's just say we wanted to lighten that, lighten it to there, and that is pretty good. So that is how easy it is to make a selection. It's really not that hard nowadays. It used to be incredibly hard. Back in the old days, you'd have to go around every little edge here. You'd probably use that magnetic lasso tool, and you'd be there for 20 minutes making a selection like that. But now, a lot of people don't realise how quick and easy it is. So there you go, that was a quick introduction on how to make selections. I hope you found it nice and simple to follow. It can be a bit of a confusing subject and a bit daunting before you delve into it. There's a few tools there and not knowing what to do with them. Just remember and have a think about what sort of selection you're going to make, whether you're selecting this whole rock here and you want this detail on every little edge, or if you just wanted to select part of this rock around here to lighten or darken it, then that'll dictate what tool you would need to use. You could use the lasso tool very quickly and easy on this one with a bit of feathering, where this one here you really need to use the select subject or the quick selection wand, and then tidy these edges up in that select and mask. But what I suggest you do is just grab grab an image and just have a bit of a play with the different tools. And look, I'm sure before not too long you'll get a handle on it, and you'll be able to make some selections, which really is necessary in Photoshop. We can do a lot of stuff with brushes, and I like to do a lot of my editing nowadays with adjustment layers and brushes rather than making selections, but there's always a case somewhere at some point in time where you do need to make a selection, so it's good to have these skills to be able to do that. Thank you so much for watching. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.